Good evening. Welcome back. Monero Matteo. It's been a little while since we've done a video. Hope you guys forgive me for that. It's been busy. For us accountant bros, it is corporate tax season, which we just wrapped up, thank goodness. And the last day was September 15th. And if your firm is behind on taxes, as we are, that's basically tax day for you. And so we've got another one coming up on October 15th, which is the deadline for extensions for individual returns. So, yeah, it's just I'm going to be working, and I'm not going to be able to pump out as much awesome content as I typically am able to. So that's why I've been kind of out. I'm also looking for a little bit of a new home. And before I forget, if you guys are interested in Orthodoxy, there's an event going on at my church, St. Mary of Egypt, in Roswell, Georgia. So come by, chat, say hi. We can give you all a little introduction to the faith. You can have some Russian tea, apparently. I'm going to be working the ticket counter. And so if you guys want to come by, do a little meet and greet, and check out the church, that'd be super cool. Because I know it's sort of an awkward thing to go to a church and, not know what's going on. It's like your first time there. You don't know anybody. It's like, does anyone speak English at a Russian church? And as you'll be surprised to find out, people actually do. But Spraznikum and Privyet, you can learn some other cool words there while you're at it. And it's a cool thing. It's like $1 to get in. And so I just want to kind of give that a little shout out, a little promo if you're in the Southeast U.S. area. Just don't murder me, okay? I know Monero Bros are sensitive about their privacy. Don't do that at a church, okay? Just wait till I leave, okay? If you happen to do that. So let's get into the content. Hope you guys have been doing well. And we're really just being more and more vindicated. Nothing's really changed since we did our last few videos. The super hyper mega bullish case is truly coming along. I think more people are starting to wake up to Monero. I'm seeing more and more accounts being made by Monero Bros who are getting out there talking about the fungibility, talking about how privacy is necessary in this new Orwellian panopticonical world. And it's really coming along. And we've sorry, I just had breakfast here, 8 o'clock at night. Had some eggs. So I'm seeing Bitcoin bros start to turn away from the faith. I'm starting to see some apostasy happening in the Bitcoin world, which is interesting. I'm also seeing it in the Ethereum world as well, where some people who had .eth next to their names, who, even to my surprise, they had that next to the names, because a lot of these people are very smart and they're brilliant and they know all about what's going on in the world. But when it comes to crypto, it's just, I guess, a little bit of a hump. But, it's interesting. We're starting to see some movement away from traditional groups in the crypto sphere. And now I think there are a lot of people just without a home. I think we have a lot of crypto refugees out there who are just kind of wandering the desert right now. They don't really know what to do because they found out that their favorite crypto is now part of the World Economic Forum plan. It's part of the crypto coup d'etat. Or maybe they're finding out that Bitcoin is like not private at all, which means it doesn't have fungibility, which means it can't even be considered real money. And so that's going to have problems. And there's somebody who I'm starting to take an interest to here on Twitter. His name is Gombat Fire. He just has great takes. And I really like finding Twitter accounts that nobody really knows about, but they just have very good ideas, very good analysis. Trace Evader is another example of that. Everybody in the Monero sphere knows about like Seth for Privacy and Doug Tooman, and they're great. But there are some rising stars, I think, in the Monero sphere who just have really good heads on their shoulders. And I'm going to go through some takes of his. But some people are really starting to piece some things together. And I'm really hoping that they take a look at Monero, because Monero really does have a lot of things figured out. And in this adversarial environment that we're going into, I think more people are going to look to Monero not only as just a privacy coin, but as a coin which is truly decentralized with the peer-to-peer mining pools, a coin which you can mine with your laptop rather than having to get all these ASICs rigs, which are becoming a concern because all these Fruit Loopy idiots are talking about, oh, my crypto, it's got to be net zero and carbon. Like, come on. I mean, the conversation's getting pretty ridiculous out there. It's making a lot of people nervous. And a lot of people are just looking to get into the group of renegade cypherpunk bros who are just like, let's let the politicians and like the weird people who want to get involved in that whole world be left to themselves. We're just working on our tech. We're just making great cryptocurrency, which allows people to transact outside of the grid and transcend the mark of the beast, CBDC monetary New World Order system. So there's that. Am I recording? Okay, yeah. So I've got a whole bunch of tabs opened up here. I'm just going to go through some things that have been happening recently, give you guys some analysis on it, and just give you guys an update on sort of what's going on. So Autism Capital, give him a follow. He's got some interesting takes. He says, in every crypto cycle, there have been strong tribes that have stuck together no matter the conditions. Whether delusion or not, they could not be shaken from their belief. This is the first cycle where there seems to be no group refuge left. Everyone has individualized. Very interesting. Except for one group, right? Like, seriously, has there been any Monero bros that you guys know of? Please let me know. I'm not saying this to be dramatic. It's like, has anyone in the Monero sphere, once they entered the sphere, left? Like, is there anyone who got into Monero and then they're all of a sudden like, you know what, never mind, I like Bitcoin better. You know, like, nobody does that. Like, once they go to Monero, they're like, I think I found my home. You know, it's similar to what happens in, well, the Ortho Bros know what I'm about to say, but I'll leave that for another time. But, you know, it's like you find Monero and it's like your home. It's like, this is everything that I've been looking for in cryptocurrency. It's totally decentralized. It doesn't have like a whole army of grifters out there saying the most nonsensical things. It's got people who are truly skeptical about whether or not the coin is going to succeed. And so they're always working on updates. They're always working on ways to make things more private. I like this group of people. I like this cryptocurrency. I mean, this cryptocurrency seems to be the best solution to a lot of the problems which are cropping up. And it's interesting that a lot of the people in the Monero sphere have been warning about things that are now coming to pass. And these people, they look like Nostradamus, right? And I'm not going to try to put myself in this category, even though if you watch our videos going back a year, we predicted the energy crisis, we predicted the KYC advancement, and a lot of Bitcoin bros are like, oh, we're going to stop this. We're going to get together. KYC can't handle us. It's like, yeah, it's just gone freaking nuclear since then. Like, it's like a Napoleon campaign, this KYC thing. It's coming. And then we've seen coping about Ethereum. It's like, oh, no, proof of stake's going to be fine. It's totally centralizing everything. And, you know, we've talked about so many of these things to where it's like, wow, these people must be brilliant. And it's not like we're that smart. It's just we're skeptical. I think there is a healthy skepticism in the Monero community about authority, about the direction of crypto, and about where a lot of things are going, right? I don't think like a lot of the people in the Monero sphere had this idea where it's like, yeah, the elites who have been in control of money for like hundreds of years and who want to use money in order to control nations and to control the world. It's like, yeah, they're just going to let us have freedom money and just waltz into the sunset. It's like, no, we understand that's not the case. And so we want to make the most robust, censorship resistant money that possibly can be, right? And so we did. And so now we're using it. Now we're building the parallel economy, right? But you have that in the Monero sphere, right? But you don't really have that anywhere else. You just have a whole bunch of coping. You have a whole bunch of coping, and it's just one cope after another. We're going to be KYC, right? We're going to be able to rely on the centralized exchanges. We're going to be able to do whatever, right? Bitcoin's going to be private enough with Lightning Network and Liquid Network. Do you guys remember the Liquid Network cope? I mean, does anyone use Liquid Network now? But anyways, yeah, it's just all this stuff is now coming to pass. We're now realizing it's not the case, and we've been in the right position all along. So more people are going to come our way and join our tribe, if you want to call it that. I don't even think it's that much of a tribe. It's not like we're tribal. It's just no other crypto really works for us. I mean, maybe you have some Monero bros who go to these other private cryptocurrencies, which I've been interested in to some degree, and I've talked about good bit here on the channel. But I think with everything going on in the world right now, why would you not want to be in the cryptocurrency privacy coin du jour? Like, why would you not want to be in Monero? I get Pirate Chain's working on stuff. I get Daro's working on stuff. I've become a little bit more skeptical about Daro, if you want to know the truth, because I've seen Seth for Privacy come out against it, Amir Taki, and some other really smart people. They've said some things about Daro which, you know, kind of make me step back a little bit. And the thing is, I'm not smart enough to really analyze these comments to any kind of significant or sophisticated degree. I'm not a tech bro. I'm not a cryptographer or mathematician. So when they say things, it's sort of like, okay, well, now who do I trust? Because you got the Daro bros saying things, and then you got these people over here who I also trust, probably trust more than the Dare Bros actually, because a lot of the Dare Bros have been coming out and saying Cypher Trace cracked Monero or whatever, which we all know is FUD. But it's a little bit of a thing. It's a little bit of a thing. I haven't sold a single private cryptocurrency. I have all my cryptocurrencies still: Zano, Haven, Darrow, Powerchain. I still have it all. I haven't sold a single thing. But still, I'm at the point now where I just want to talk about Monero, because that's how you bring people into the space, and that's how you get people excited about building parallel economies and privacy networks. And that's what's important in this time, I think, more than anything else. Like, why go gamble on these other cryptos? Now, if you want to do that, that's fine, but realize it is a gamble, because unless they're being used on the dark web marketplaces, how do you know if the privacy actually works? Because I'm not a cryptographer. Again, I'm not a sophisticated tech bro. A lot of people say the privacy is fine with Powerchain. Even in the Monero sphere, they say that. And some people in the Monero sphere even have taken a liking to Darrow. But the thing is, somebody like me doesn't know until the heuristics have been established, until it's being used and people are risking their lives using this stuff. Otherwise, how do I know if it's real? And I want to be the guy to get people to use the thing which the IRS is saying that they're going to pay somebody $1 million to crack. Okay, so that's where I'm at with that. I know that maybe you guys have been curious about what I've thought about what I used to call the Freedom Coin Covenant. That's where I am now. So in regards to what we've been talking about in regards to Bitcoin Bros kind of moving away from Bitcoin and branching out into other ventures, Crypto Vinco, who I think was called Crypto Whale, he came out and said Pompliano has removed Bitcoin from his bio, laser eyes from his profile picture, and hasn't mentioned Bitcoin in months. One by one, Bitcoin maximalists are giving up, moving on to other hobbies as they realize they were wrong about everything. Yeah, they were wrong about Bitcoin. More people are going to recognize this, and especially when you have like Michael Saylor, who is now becoming somewhat of a parody, but he's still a significant influence in the Bitcoin realm. It's sort of like, maybe I should move away from this stuff. Maybe my credibility is being tarnished by associating myself with this cryptocurrency, which is now turning into a caricature, right? Because I assure you, people like Antonopoulos, Pompliano, and these other guys who are prominent Bitcoin bros, Michael Saylor, for sure, we know this. They know about Monero. They know Monero is a better cryptocurrency. Michael Saylor, he'll make tweets like Bitcoin's the only cryptocurrency. It's the only proof of work crypto left. He knows about Monero, and he has said in interviews, if you want something really good, if you want something that's truly private, then use Monero. If you want something that's like better than Bitcoin, I forgot what exactly the quote was, but I think he said like Monero is like too good, right? And his whole problem with Monero is like it's so good in regards to privacy that they're probably going to ban it. And we've seen some delistings on exchanges. Is like that's continuing to happen. That's not a thing that bothers us because decentralized exchanges are cropping up everywhere. Not an issue for us. We're not regulatory bros. We're not here for the gains necessarily. We're here for freedom money. He knows about Monero. Pompliano has to know about Monero. We know for sure that who's that guy who does what Bitcoin did? Peter McCormick. He knows about Monero. Stuff for Privacy has been talking to him about it, and now he's opening up to it. So I'm thinking like a lot of these guys, they're seeing a movement slowly but surely, whether it's conversations in private they're having with other Bitcoin bros or they're just seeing it online. People are moving to Monero, or people are just losing faith that Bitcoin is the freedom money that they were sold that it was. I think people are losing faith in that because this whole thing with Ethereum, it's interesting. I think a lot of people are being totally like red-pilled on the crypto coup d'etat, which has been happening for a long time. We've been telling you all about it with the digital currency group, with Coinbase and the people invested in them, and how the legacy financial system is slowly taking over. All the exchanges and all of the layer 2 forensic data analytical companies and all this stuff, right? We've seen this coming for a while, but I think a lot of them are waking up to it too. And they're starting to say, have we been selling the public pretty much like a surveillance system, like a financial panopticon, which is going to make it so that people have everything they do like totally tracked and traced? Is Lightning Network really the solution? Because the research reports coming out say it's actually becoming less private the bigger it gets. It's getting more centralized the bigger it gets. Wow, who could have seen that coming? Okay, so I think they are starting to, because of the bear market, sober up. And this is a good thing. We shouldn't hate on these people for doing this. One trend that I'm seeing that I don't like is when people change position on something. People like to just pile on people online. And it's very immature, and you have to forgive people for being wrong. You have to let people evolve their position. Now, some people may be skeptical of people who do this because they may think that they use this prominent, popular thing, which was the big thing at the time, in order to become more prominent. But you have to allow people to sober up and acknowledge that maybe there's a better position to take. Maybe there's something more reasonable out there. And I think that Pompliano has come out and he's talked about why it is he got rid of the laser eyes from Bitcoin or whatever. He's wanting to move on to better things or just other things, right? And, especially if you're Pompliano and you've been talking about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in particular for many, many years, I think it's reasonable to go talk about different things that you have an interest in. That's something that I've been doing recently on Twitter. I mean, I used to make like every post about Monero, and not so much now. I'm sort of branching out into like the orthosphere, and I'm branching out into different other things which I find interesting. And I think people should be allowed the freedom to do that. And I think that's good. So I think it's a healthy development that you're seeing a lot of Bitcoin bros like Will Clemente and Pompliano start to entertain different positions, and I think they're buying Monero, frankly. I think they are. But again, as we've talked about, nobody wants to yell Monero in a crowded Bitcoin theater. But I think the bear market's going to give a lot of opportunity for people to reassess, which I think is fantastic. So this is Jay Dyer. I'm a fan of Jay. I like Jay. And I actually met him up in Tennessee once for a short period, and I told him about Monero. He knows about it. Is he on board? He said he wasn't against it. He doesn't have a problem with Monero. I don't know if he's into Monero. I've tried to get him on the channel. I've wanted to talk to him, but I've been trying to reach out to Ortho Bros to tell him about Monero because I think there are a couple things going on. It's like you have a lot of very, very intelligent Orthodox people out there. Very, very intelligent. Like you go to my church or you go to other Orthodox churches, you are surrounded by brilliant people who truly humble you. I mean, if you think you're smart, go to an Orthodox church. You'll find the most brilliant people. It's amazing. But I think sometimes if you are really smart in one area, you think that can translate to other areas, and it's not that simple. Like you have to do a lot of research. You have to realize there's a lot of deception out there in a lot of these different realms, and it takes a long time to sort of find the truth of things. And that's actually something that I did as I did the channel. Like when I first got into Monero, I didn't even know about a lot of the things that I came to figure out about. And it was because I had the channel that I was incentivized to do a lot of the research that I did and to come up with the super hyper mega bullish case. I mean, all this stuff kind of evolved with the channel. I didn't know a lot of this stuff when I started. And it took hundreds of hours of research to kind of piece together what we now call the super hyper mega bullish case. And I worry that a lot of people who know about the technocracy, they know about where the world's going, they know that there's this like surveillance grid being built all around us, and we're going to be incentivized into this with shortages, with scarcity, and with other things that we've discussed. And I want people to have an out of that. And I especially want the Orthodox to have an out of that, because I think it's the Orthodox Christians who are going to be targeted by this system more than probably anybody, especially the Russian ones. And I'm part of the Russian church, and I love the Russian church. And I think that they're going to be persecuted if this thing in Ukraine continues to move forward in the way that it is. And there starts to be more escalation. And I want to have people have an out to where they can trade with each other, they can donate to the church privately, they can do things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do, as we're going to continue to see with things like PayPal or Patreon, which we saw during the Canadian Freedom Convoy protests, cut people off and stole their money. We're seeing this more and more. This is a trend. And we're trying to get people into Monero so that that doesn't happen. And we actually saw this with Zero Hedge. I'm going to get to that also here. But interestingly enough, you have that contingent of the Orthodox who just don't know about Monero yet. And then you have the other part of Orthodoxy who are already Monero pilled. They didn't need to listen to this channel. They're very smart. In fact, I have one buddy of mine, Andrew, who is getting me into Linux. And he's recommending Manjaro to me, I think is the name of it. And if you guys are educated on Linux, let me know what you guys think of Manjaro. He's going to get me onto that. But he is like anti-crypto, except for Monero, because he understands like all the other cryptocurrencies are totally tracked and traced. And, he's smart. He's smart. And I know some other Orthodox people. It's like they're in it to invest, and they've got like the sheep tokens and the dog coins. They know about Monero too. They're like, yeah, Monero's like the real deal. So there are certain demographics of people that I'm definitely trying to reach because I think they could use it more than anybody. And I'm trying to build a community with this stuff. And, if really push comes to shove, and I really should say when, they're putting bugs in the food everywhere and they don't want you to have meat. You can only buy a certain allotment of meat because it emits too much CO2 to produce meat. Or everyone's garden is registered with the People's Liberation Garden of America or whatever. You're going to want to figure out a way where you can get food or like other basic necessities outside the grid, and you're not going to be on the CBD system, or you're not going to have cash because we're going into a cash society, as we talked about in the super hyper mega bullish case update video. It's coming, and I think you guys who have watched the channel for a while recognize the value of this, but there is still a lot of people that I care about and that I want the best for who don't understand this yet. And it's sort of one of those things where it's like, it's one of those things where people have to, I think, see the need for it when it's right in front of their face. That's not the right way to word it. How do I say this? It's like you need to be in a situation where you need it in order to value it, almost. And, it's sort of something that I talked about with my spiritual father at church or with a priest. I was like, hey, I've got good friends of mine. They have great hearts. They're great people, but, they're somewhat nihilistic and they're looking for meaning in life, and they're sort of wandering the desert, or they have some other issue. And I know that they could value or benefit tremendously from coming to the church. And I have benefited tremendously coming to the church, and I think they could too, but I can't bring them to church for some reason. Either they wiggle their way out of it, or, they come up with some excuse or whatever. And I'm not trying to judge or condemn them. I mean, especially me coming from an American background, trust me, I understand. Churches can sound squirrely here in 2022. Especially if you know about everything that's going on with the Catholic Church. But he said something that was very wise, and that I took to the Orthodox realm and to the cryptocurrency realm in regards to Monero. You have to allow people to find their way and realize the value of things when the time has come for them to value it. And this is something which is said a lot in the Monero sphere, where it's like, people will look for privacy and value privacy when they really need it. And I think that is true. And it's like I didn't want it to be true before, because I just wanted people to get this stuff and be ahead of the curve, so we didn't have to get down to crunch time and then have to onboard a whole bunch of people at once and then try to tell people how it works. And, I like to plan ahead. I don't like to procrastinate. I like to just figure out problems before they become a problem. And I understand a lot of humanity just isn't like that. They're very reactive instead of proactive, or like we like to say broactive, right? But anyways, without ranting too much, Jay says, not looking good here. Ethereum becomes WEF coin and a global CBDC is born. And he used to be an Ethereum bro. He used to be super bullish on it. And now he understands that, yeah, it's a total globalista coin. Total globalista coin. And this guy says, not a surprise, Bitcoin is the only option. And he says, yep, back to basics. Okay, so now he's pivoting to Bitcoin. Oh, man, I hope he learns about Monero at some point. That'd be awesome. But God bless Jay. If you actually don't know Jay Dye, you need to look into his work. He's super ahead of the curve on just about everything else. So this is the article he linked to. Ethereum becomes WEF coin and a global CBDC is born. Marketed as a climate-friendly alternative. Here we go. Climate-friendly alternative. And by the way, if you guys haven't picked up on this agenda yet, anything that's not something that the elites like, they're just going to say, hey, it's going to destroy the earth, climate change, blah, blah, blah. It's banned. It's pretty much how it works. And a major digital asset becomes the front runner for a global central bank digital currency. Now, this is almost going too far to me, to be honest with you. I don't know if Ethereum itself is going to become a CBDC. I mean, it's totally able to be surveilled. That's true. In fact, it's less private than even Bitcoin. But is it going to become a CBDC itself? I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be the basis of a CBDC, like a CBDC is built on top of it. Because on Ethereum, you have a USD coin. And go check out Money Today. He's done a lot of show on the stable coins like Tether and USDC. And the guy behind that, who's Jim Breyer, who's like a total globalista. He's like connected deeply with China and with Mitch McConnell and with central banks and all this stuff, like AI and all this. It's crazy. Okay. But it could be that USDC becomes part of like the central bank system. Who knows? But that's something that maybe seems a little too out there for me. I mean, it could be that they just have regulatorily captured Ethereum to where it's not any longer a risk, and they can just deploy their central bank digital currencies and be able to kind of keep Ethereum to the side. And whoever wants to move into Ethereum, that's fine. It's a digital asset, but cool, we're going to tax the crap out of you. Maybe unrealized capital gains taxes come along. And then as inflation gets worse and as the value of your Ethereum portfolio goes up, they know where it is. And because of your nominal gains and unrealized capital gains, then you just get your wealth sucked out of you that way, right? Like your real value just gets sucked out, literally. That's the big fear that I have with, well, I'm not going to say fear. I'm not really afraid of anything because of Christ and Monero. But it's like, you know, if you have a surveillance coin like Bitcoin or Ethereum, okay, and they've already made the attempt at unrealized capital gains. It's coming, as far as I know. You have, let's say, $100 in Bitcoin, okay? Inflation's going crazy. Inflation's at 50%. And so your Bitcoin goes to $150, okay? Did the real value of your Bitcoin change? No. It just went up to $150 in nominal terms. But if you have unrealized capital gains tax you have to pay on that gain, well, then your real value is going down because you're going to be paying taxes on that nominal gain. So that's how they're going to suck your wealth out. If you've got all of your assets in a digital system, which can be surveilled, and who knows? I mean, we've seen Europe talk about coming up with a data registry in coordination and conjunction with the Internet of Things, where you've got chips in your physical assets, and those physical assets, as well as your digital assets, get compiled into some register or database that they have, and then they do unrealized capital gains. I mean, maybe they do it that way. I mean, we're talking about communism here. They're very creative now. They have all the technology in the world to really make it a dystopia like you have no idea. And the thing I love about Monero Bros, they see this coming. But if you're in Ethereum, it makes it that much easier to get, and it's not so much a threat as much as it becomes a useful part of their plan and their agenda. So it's just something to think about. I'm just thinking out loud with you guys. But yeah, this goes into kind of what the change to proof of stake means and, you know, why that's going to be a problem, blah, blah, blah. We already know, right? But Chris Black, who is sort of like the leading head of DeFi analysis on Twitter that I know about. If you guys have anyone else that you think is interesting, let me know. But this guy, he's like a true patriot, loves America, loves Monero. He's also been on Monero Talk. I go check that out. I think that was a good conversation. But he says this. He says, there's basically a 0% chance that Ethereum doesn't devolve into a government compliance base layer. There's far too much to lose now. Token holders, including ETH holders, do not vote based on principle. They vote based on profit potential. A pirate blockchain isn't profitable. Right. So that's another thing. And that's the nature of grift, ladies and gentlemen. The nature of grift, whether it's the government, whether it's these other weird things coming about in like the manosphere, right? It's like, you want to be a man, do these like 500 different things, and you'll be a well-rounded man. It's like, okay, well, I can just shorten that up to 3 things. Go to work, go to the gym, go to church. Boom. You got that taken care of. Or like with Bitcoin, right? You get a lot of people who can profit from layer 2 solutions because Bitcoin is slow on the base layer, because you had a certain cadre of people who decided to keep the block size small, which means only so many transactions can be processed, which means you got to come up with efficient layer 2 solutions, which makes certain people who develop those things rich, right? Or whoever is going to be the big nodes on those things. And then it gets co-opted, right? And then the regulators get involved, and especially data analytical firms get involved because there isn't too much privacy on base layer, on the layer 1 or layer 2. And so you get all this industry, which crops up on top of the flaws and on top of the inefficiencies of this technology, which is another reason why it's going to be promoted. They're going to want Bitcoin and Ethereum to be promoted because of these flaws. Flaws are profitable because people profit from fixing the flaws. And as he says here, a pirate blockchain, he's talking about Monero basically, is not profitable to data analytical companies. It's not profitable to governments who want to regulate. It's not profitable to governments who want to tax, etc. So they're not going to like it so much, which is why we're seeing the delistings that South Korea seems to be spearheading. So, moving on. So Jack here, he says, is it as simple as this? Majority of ETH staked will be kept on exchanges, 1. Step 2, all exchanges will become major validators. Step 3, regulators will control the exchanges. Step 4, Ethereum successfully replicates the current system. Is this actually what ETH is trying to do? It seems reasonable to me. And we talked about this in more detail in the last video, if you want to go check that out. But basically, my response to this was what I talked about in the video, which is they hand wave this issue away with the community doing a soft fork and bleeding out the stake of the censoring validators. Seems unlikely, significantly risky, and possibly has legal implications. How you laid it out seems to be the logical direction it goes to me. Yeah. So I think it's being regulatorily captured. I think that's a no-brainer at this point. Most people acknowledge that. I mean, you got some people coping, I think, where they're just like, no, it's more efficient. We're saving the planet or whatever. But we know what's going on. Am I recording? Let me just make sure. We're at 30 minutes already. Cool. I'm just spazzing out. So check out this map. We've checked this out in just about every video. It continues to develop. It's quite amazing just where this has gone. I mean, from a year ago. A year ago, you had a lot of white. You had a few green here and there, a couple countries in development. But now all of these countries are being colored in. I mean, Africa is mainly the country which is being left out. Africa, you have a chance. Don't do it. Don't do it. But you have Russia here in the pilot stage, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, China in the pilot stage, Malaysia, Singapore, South Africa, and interestingly enough, check this out, South Korea. So I tried to do more research on this, but I don't quite understand what's going on here because you've got status pilot, use case retail, you've got some other things down here, Samsung partnerships, whatever. But for technology, it says Ethereum. I don't know what that means. I tried to do more research on this, and Rafael Laverde, he linked me a comment for a video on the Crypto Vigilante. I guess he goes more into this, but I apologize. I haven't watched it yet, Rafael. But yeah, that's curious, isn't it? Like, why does it say Ethereum is being used for the technology? Because that kind of plays into what Jay is linking to here with Ethereum becoming a WEF coin and a CBDC. I mean, but I don't want to assume too much because I haven't been made privy to any more information other than this. So if you guys have more information, let me know about that. It's just kind of a curious thing I saw. But check it out. I mean, we're seeing more crackdowns on non-CBDC crypto. And as CBDCs get developed all around the world, we're going to see more of that. So that's just a no-brainer. Moving on. So now that we have the shift to proof of stake, you can expect attacks on proof of work's energy usage to escalate now. And we've already seen how you've got like campaigns by Greenpeace to make Bitcoin proof of stake or to like to change the code or whatever. It's just such crap. I mean, I'm not a Bitcoin bro. I don't own any Bitcoin. But even I acknowledge the whole carbon thing to just be a whole bunch of crap. And I was upset that Elon Musk, after he bought Bitcoin, did a quick 180, and he's like, oh no, Tesla can't buy Bitcoin. We can't be involved in this. It just uses too much energy. Stop, guys. And, you know, I think most people acknowledged that was a whole bunch of crap, and then they went back to loving him because I guess he was battling the globalists at the same time too or whatever. People are just so screwed up on Elon Musk. It's funny, but, you know, it's interesting. It's interesting that we have so much evidence prior to crypto that climate change and the environmentalist movement has been used to bring about centralization in government, to bring about carbon taxes and the control of the food supply and the control of just about everything else in your daily life. And once it goes to crypto, like you have a big contingency of the crypto population, which are like, yeah, maybe we should actually consider this, guys. Maybe we should consider how to mine this stuff in an environmentally friendly way, which plays into another thing that we predicted, which is you're going to need permits to mine Bitcoin. I think that's highly likely. I think you're going to need permits to mine this stuff, just like you need permits to open up an oil well. You're going to have to go through like the EPA if you want to get a permit to mine Bitcoin. I see that as ever increasingly probable. But yeah, it's just crazy how the crypto bros are falling into this narrative. And, it's just interesting how everything is so nonlinear like that. It's like if you don't push back against one particular narrative, even though it's like you don't really care too much about it, and it just seems like a peripheral thing, if you don't get that in check, and if you don't speak truth about that particular thing, that goes on to affect something in a butterfly effect-like way that you didn't comprehend, which then comes to affect you personally. And it just kind of highlights the importance of speaking the truth on everything that's going on, and just to try to speak honestly about anything going on in the world, which may be deceptive, which may be, false and promoted for a reason which is nefarious. And I think that is important to note. That's something that Jordan Peterson talks a lot about. It's like when you speak the truth, you do good in ways that you can't quite understand or comprehend. It just, you order things in reality, and you fix disorders that maybe you're not even aware of, but through the sound of the logos coming through, it just is able to transcend that chaos into something that is orderly. And now we're seeing the chaos of the whole climate change crap move its way into crypto to, subvert that and co-opt it. But, it's interesting. Moving on. Today's filings make it clear the SEC isn't interested in applying the law. This has to do, I think, with Ripple. It's just a side story, real quick. They want to remake it all in an impermissible effort to expand their jurisdiction far beyond the authority granted to them by Congress. We'll go figure, right? What are you going to do about it? Again, this just kind of confirms our position that we shouldn't concern ourselves with what's going on in politics. We should just make money which works, and while it's still legal and we still have somewhat reasonable access to it, build these parallel economies so that we can, have a better chance. This is Dennis Porter, who I've become convinced this guy works for like an intelligence agency. Like if it's not the CIA, it's the BIA. It's like the Bitcoin Intelligence Agency. It's like this guy goes out there to shamelessly get on every single agenda that the elites are about, and then talk. It's like he's like a deputy executive of Michael Saylor's Bitcoin Kingdom. It's like he hops on all these agendas, and if it promotes Bitcoin, then he'll do it, right? And a lot of what he says is just flat out false. But I'm not trying to slander him. I'm not trying to condemn him. I'm just saying, like, look out for this guy. I'm sure you guys have seen him around for whatever reason. Even though I don't follow him, he's everywhere in my feed. I can't get away from him. But he says things like this. He says, Ethereum going carbon neutral. And then it's like a bus, and then it gets hit by a train, and it's like Bitcoin going carbon negative. Okay, it's just crazy. It's just crazy stuff. But again, we see the Bitcoin bros buying into the narrative. The proper response to this whole climate thing, and are we going to be carbon zero? Is our crypto efficient enough? Whatever. Is we're changing the conversation. The proper way to approach somebody who's like, is your crypto carbon neutral? Is, yeah, I'm not using the CBDC. Go away. Like that should be your analysis. It's like the same thing with the stabby, right? It's like somebody who wants to go to you and they're like, don't you care about the children? Don't you care about spreading the disease, which kills like 1 in a million people? Don't you want to take the jab just to, go along to get along and just be a good little citizen? It's like, no. Could I please get my sandwich and just go away? Can you not get in my way? And like, can I go to the beach, please, and just not have like drones following me with spray? Sorry to spur out there, but like, you know what I mean, right? Change the conversation. I can't even entertain this. You can't even entertain it. You just got to move on. It's nonsense. But moving on. I got so many tabs to get through. I got to kind of speed through this. If you're still questioning whether or not Bitcoin can be used positively to impact the grid and clean up the environment, just know you are far behind. Even the U.S. government has figured this out, right? So CIA confirmed. I think this guy's in on the PSYOP. I think this guy should change his name to Dennis Rothschild. How about that? Bro. Crypto tech firm Blockfills offers ESG credits to miners. The firm said it's working with Isla Verde Capital to sell carbon credits to miners who get their power from renewable energy resources. Now, we're not going to go through this article. The details don't matter, but that's where this is going, right? This is going to play into the whole carbon market scheme, carbon credits, and yeah, I mean, if you're a Bitcoin miner, you're going to have to play into this. Because the Bitcoin miners who are able to effectively and efficiently mine in a carbon zero way, they're going to be the ones to lobby for this regulation because they want to outprice the marginal miner. They want to consolidate that market share. And apparently it's becoming very competitive, the Bitcoin mining sphere. And so if you can get an advantage by regulating your competitor, well, you're going to do it. And that comprises stuff like this, making it so that you can get cheap ESG carbon credits and your competitor can't, right? And you get those credits because you know somebody or you're abiding by some regulation which gives you access to that market or something. So Elliot David, head strategy and partnerships at Sustainable Bitcoin Protocol, a company that is developing an on-chain product for miners looking to certify their energy use, said that unless a miner is holding the RECs attributed to the power consumption, they can't technically claim they're using clean energy. Yeah, so that's definitely going to become part of this whole thing. Comments on the White House report on the climate implications of crypto mining. Yeah, so the White House, they came out with a report basically saying that, yeah, if Bitcoin does not become like net zero or something like that, like if it doesn't become environmentally friendly by either changing the code or there being like an initiative to make this stuff more environmentally friendly to mine, well then, sorry, brother, we're just going to ban it. They're going to ban Bitcoin mining. Now, I don't think this is actually going to happen. Let me tell you why. I don't think they're actually going to ban Bitcoin mining. I think it's actually more likely that they're just going to use this as a pretext to regulate it. And if Bitcoin becomes something they can't control, this is like a contingency plan. This is like a hedge. This is like a way for them to have like a back pocket plan B, so that if Bitcoin really starts to turn into something that they can't, get a grip on, they just say, oh, it's bad for the environment. Sorry, it's banned. And if they can drip that into the consciousness of the Bitcoin bros or the crypto bros in general, well then, that can give it a higher likelihood of success should it come to that. So that's something that I'm looking at here. I don't really want to get into all that because we kind of know it's coming anyway. This whole agenda. I mean, I think there's so much investment by the institutions in the peripheral crypto space that Bitcoin plays into that I don't think they're going to necessarily ban it. Like as we've seen, BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, and a lot of these big investment firms, they're invested in Bitcoin mining. And Silvergate Capital is invested in Bitcoin mining. Michael Saylor and his cadre of bros are invested in Bitcoin mining through the Bitcoin Mining Alliance or whatever. We looked at that in the about 2 videos ago. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. But if it does, it does, and they're going to do it for a good reason. Maybe it's like at the launch of CBDC. If people don't want to turn in their Bitcoin to, buy their CBDC through like an Executive 66 type thing. Like you guys remember back in 39? We don't remember, but did you read about this in 39 where you had to turn in your gold if you wanted to get, if you wanted to stay compliant? Like you couldn't own gold. I think that was executive order by, I think, Roosevelt, I want to say. And it's like you turn in your gold, and then after they got a sufficient number of people to turn in their gold, they hiked the gold price up like like 150% or something like that. Like they made a new benchmark. It went from like $20 to $35. Well, I guess that'd be 75%. But yeah, I mean, that could be something that they do. And they could do it more effectively actually with Bitcoin because they know that you got the Bitcoin, especially if you got it through KYC, which is an ever more encroaching thing. So just interesting things to think about. Daniel Batten, says, so Bitcoin mining is the most viable way to use the world's vented methane. At 7 MW a month, Bitcoin becomes carbon negative by December 24. Ethereum can go zero emission, but no longer carbon negative. Bitcoin powered 20% on vented methane will reduce global emissions by 2%. So whatever you think about this, again, the guy is playing into the narrative as if this matters. As if this matters. And by the way, none of this would have to take any carbon if we just use nuclear power, which unfortunately in Europe, they're using more and more coal and more gas. Well, less and less gas. They're using more and more coal and firewood because there are fools who didn't set up nuclear power in the crazy event that they just happen to sanction Russia and they do something about it and cut off 50% of their natural gas supply. But yeah, and this guy, Darren Feinstein, he's got a good thread. It's a long thread about kind of what could happen with the CBDC. And I'm going to read this because I want people to sort of recognize what the threat of CBDC is and why Monero is so important. So this guy says, purchase denied. You have consumed your quota of real meat this month. Please try a meat substitute from the vegan shelf. He says, purchase denied. Your voting records show you did not participate in the latest polls. Accounts will be reinstated in 72 hours after completion of polls. Your financial accounts, right? CBDC is purchase denied. Your energy footprint this month exceeded maximum allowable under WEF guidelines. Your account will be reinstated in 14 days. That's another thing that we talked about. We're seeing carbon credit cards come out. MasterCard has a carbon credit card now. And they're saying right now, oh, it's just a cute way for you to track your carbon. If you're somebody who cares about the planet and you want to yourself sort of adjust your spending habits, if you want to, make sure that, the sea level doesn't rise 2 centimeters, well, then you can do that. But then it's going to be, well, here's some incentives for you to do it. I mean, you get some discounts if you go to this and that store. If you buy a vegan sandwich, you get 50% off, maybe some extra cash back with your carbon credit card. And then once they get enough people on board, then it's like, well, if you're not using it, then you just can't shop at the store. It's going to be the same development with the Stabby. It's going to be like cool at first. This is something that helps you, right? If you're interested in being part of this larger agenda. And then it's going to be, oh, well, if you do this, well, then, you get some benefits. Just as with the Stabby, you get some chicken nuggets. You get $1,000, whatever. And then it's, you got to do it. And if they got everybody else on board because they're incentivized, well, it's not that hard to get the rest of the people on board, especially if the other people are on board and they're already having to make the sacrifice in using it, then they're going to want other people to do it at that point. It's like a psychological thing. And that's going to be the development with CBDCs too, I imagine. And I imagine CBDCs are probably going to be rolled out in the context of food rations. I think that's going to be one of the main things. It's like if you want to get your ration of goods, you're going to have to use the CBDC. When you could really just use Monero and get into the dark black markets and buy what you need. Because they're going to ban cash at that point. They don't want money leaking out of the system. They're going to say it's for the good of everybody. It's for the common good that we don't have people trading in the black market, stealing resources from the people. And so we're going to ban the use of cash completely, which they're already doing. I mean, it's a slow motion move that they're doing right now. But it's going to get to a point where they just, boom, shut it off. It's going to be like an avalanche. I predict, anyway. I mean, maybe they don't cut cash off completely, but there is a war on cash right now, and I think that's the direction it's going. Moving forward, he says, purchase denied. We have detected unfavorable political comments on your social media. Please delete these posts. Purchase denied. Your carbon score is above WEF guidelines. We have disabled access to your vehicle and revoked your travel privileges. Yeah, I'm skeptical about these smart cars or whatever, these Teslas, which can just like lock you in there and take you to a police station as far as I'm concerned. Purchase denied. This is your 4th alcoholic beverage this week. Your social credit score currently allows for 4. Please try a non-alcoholic substitute. And then he goes on, right? And then he goes on. But yeah, all that stuff is pretty predictable. Pretty predictable. And maybe it's not with their own digital CBDC ledger, which I think is going to be logistically interesting to see roll out. I mean, I'm still very interested to see how China rolls out theirs, because the implication is you have to bypass the banking system, and people have to set up direct accounts at the Fed instead of at these banks. And then what are the banks used for? Like, how do they make money? Maybe through like 50% payday loan like credit cards. I mean, maybe that's how they do it. I don't know. But that's going to affect the bank's bottom line, I think. But they're all basically one thing, so who cares? Just in, White House, digital assets pose meaningful risks, while a U.S. central bank digital currency has the potential to offer significant benefits. That's where it's going. And then Stoic XMR, he's another guy that I've kind of taken a liking to on Twitter. Go follow him. He's got some good takes. He hosts like these spaces, and people go to chat there. He's invited me to a number of them. If you're watching this, bro, I apologize. I've just been crazy busy. And also, it's not in my nature to like do interviews and to go in these spaces and have discussions. That sounds wildly antisocial, but I'm naturally an introvert, and I like just kind of spurging out behind a computer. I think that's what I do best. And I like talking to some other people in the community, like Money Today Show and Arctic Mind. They're great, but I think that's one of the reasons why I haven't been on Monero Talk. I mean, he's invited me on. It's just I've been very busy, and I'm slightly antisocial when it comes to internet discussion. So I apologize. Moving on, he says Bitcoiners talk about CBDCs and digital identities. Lol, who's going to tell them? Right. So maybe they could still do like a social credit thing, because they get everybody onboarded to exchanges. They incentivize people to keep their crypto on the exchanges. Your identity is tied into the exchanges, and then they can just score you based on what you're doing there. Because at that point, all these big corporates and all these small shops, if they're going along with this thing, especially if there's a CBDC type deal, and they've got the EIN numbers of the businesses, which means you've got like a wallet probably registered with the government, which means they're watching and seeing everything that you're doing with your crypto to make sure that it's easily auditable for taxes and everything like that. Well, then they're going to be able to see everything that you're doing with your money, everywhere that you spend it. And if you send it to yourself, well, then it's going to be like, okay, well, you got to report that you sent it to another wallet which belongs to you. And the way that they're going to do that is, if you don't report it, then it's assumed that you sold it. And if you sold it, that means you have to mark a gain or loss, or you just have to report that you sold the asset in the first place, right? And that's how they're going to get you anyway. So, no, stop buying. And this is like Walter White in the back of the car in that scene where he's trying to tell Hank, get down, run, Hank, don't do this. No, stop buying. It's really an inflation hedge. They're just podcasters. They have no idea what they're talking about. No one's using it in El Salvador. It's just a marketing campaign. Be careful. They want to prove the ETF. What are you doing? You're buying the top. No. Yeah, so many people bought the top. Rip. But this is from Udi Wertheimer. I thought it was kind of funny. But, yeah, it's another thing that the government benefits from in regards to Bitcoin. It's an inflation pool, Instead of that money moving out into like gold or silver, which are historically inflation barometers, it's going into cryptocurrency, which means that's inflation that's kind of like sitting there. Just kind of like the inflation that's going into the reverse repo market, where there's like $2 trillion just kind of like chilling there. I mean, it was really helpful for the government to have, $1.5 trillion just sitting in cryptos, which weren't doing anything, especially because people had this like hodl mentality. Just hold it. Don't buy anything. Yeah, that's not money that's moving through the economy. That's money velocity going down, which means that they can cover up a lot of the inflation that they've done, right? Because inflation is just the printing of money. It's not necessarily like the raising of the price of goods, but the raising of the price of goods will happen if money velocity picks up while they print money, right? So the tools to track crypto. Fungible, another great guy who's come onto the scene recently. Give him a follow. He says the tools to track crypto purchases are already very sophisticated and debunks all privacy. This image shows how Axie Infinity hackers who use AI-based cross-chain hopping across 12,000 wallets were traced easily. So, yeah, they're integrating AI with their data intelligence tools. and it's going to be very hard to evade this stuff. I mean, you could do all the wasabi stuff you want to. There have been holes which have been found with wasabi and coin joins, and as we saw with the tornado cast thing, and I think they already banned like another coin mixing service before that. There's going to be increased pressure on the coin mixing services, the whirlpools, whatever. They're going to make them illegal, and they know if you're using it. And so even if you do use that stuff and you happen to not get caught, they're going to know that they can know with their tools that they're developing, like where your money's going, right? And as more people get onto the grid, as KYC expands, they have more nodes, right? And so they can more easily piece together through metadata the missing links, if that makes sense. So as the puzzle gets ever more complete, the more likely that they can out the people who are actually trying to be private and use private tools, which is why you need privacy on the base layer again. So people will learn at some point. We just need like another 10,000 people to get arrested, I guess. We need some people to take it for the team, I suppose. Oh, boy. And this is Combat Fire. This is the guy I was telling you about earlier. Go follow him. He's got 133 followers, bro. Yeah, go give him a follow. He's got some good takes. He says, oh, boy, this is going to be interesting to watch. So he's talking about something that I think Luke Smith had predicted a number of years ago. And if you guys don't follow Luke Smith, you should. I mean, he's got some of the greatest takes on the internet. He's a Monero bro. He is an Orthodox Christian. And he talks about free open source software. I don't see how you can do more good with a YouTube channel than that. I mean, that's getting the truth out. Fractional or zero reserve Lightning Network. Thank you. You have explicitly opted into it. If you do, be mindful of who you accept these channels from and the risks. So they're talking about maybe a fractional reserve system being built on the Lightning Network because they're talking about creating channels without there having to be liquidity in the channels first. Welcome to the future of channel opens. They open instantly. They don't require any coins, only have one small flaw vis-a-vis settlement. So, yeah, sounds pretty fractional reserved to me. And Combat Fire said, in response to me saying Luke Smith predicted this, it's simply the natural outcome of scaling an asset by not using the asset itself. You slowly start to lose its priorities or its properties. Banks started as the L2 of gold. History just repeats itself. Right. We'll see. We'll see. I think that's not something which is outside of the realm of possibility. I think it's something that the Bitcoin bros should consider. And then he reports some other news that I didn't hear about. He says, this is the fourth mining farm Argentinian authorities raided this week. So I didn't even know they were raiding mining farms in Argentina, but I guess that's happening. And Argentina is like a huge black market. You got crazy inflation. Just a mess over there. So a lot of people are going into crypto. But if you want to engage in the black market, you're probably going to increasingly need Monero. Meanwhile, ASICs are facing serious import restrictions. CPU mining allows for a low barrier of entry that disincentivizes concentrated farms. Monero's RandomX is proof of work done right, where you can just mine with a laptop. Yeah, it's way better. You don't have like the bottleneck problem with ASICs manufacturers. You don't have a lot of energy being used necessarily in these farms by ASICs. You can just use a laptop, which is fantastic. Reminder that the IMF specifically demanded Argentina to, quote-unquote, discourage the use of cryptocurrencies with a view to prevent money laundering, informality, and disintermediation. That's very interesting. I've not heard about this. So thank you, Combat Fire, for the report. I think that's very interesting. But yeah, they're raiding mining farms. I've not heard of mining farms from Monero being raided. I've not heard about that. Again, because there's nothing sketchy about going to a store and buying a laptop, which as far as anyone's concerned is a Monero miner, right? Now, if you have like a freaking entire apartment filled with laptops, That may be kind of weird. And you're probably using a lot of energy and causing a lot of attention to yourself. But just, I think that's interesting. Take note. As we know, in some years, only businesses and later only institutions will be able to transact in Bitcoin's layer 1. That's the plan. That's the planned outcome following Hal Finney's vision. And apparently this is the plan of the core team, apparently, according to him. Again, I have not researched this. This is another unique take from Gone Bat Fire. What will happen to the people caught in the middle? And I'm going to read this thread here because I've not considered this. He says, what if you don't move over to a L2 before the prohibitive fees arrive? So, if there's a lot of adoption going on with Bitcoin, the transaction costs are getting more and more expensive because the block size only allows for 7 transactions per second, give or take. And so if you have more people transacting, fees are going up, and you got to pay more in order to get your transaction included in a block. And so he asks, what if you don't move over to an L2 where you can pay cheaper fees in order to transact? He says you can essentially get locked out of your funds if you are not paying enough attention. Wasn't the point of avoiding hard forks to prevent this? You can store 1 Bitcoin on chain, wake up 20 years later, and find that in order to move it, you must spend 50% of it in fees or maybe even more than the entire amount that you have. What are your options then? This is not theoretical. It already happened with Ethereum. People who had about $100 in Ethereum from a few years ago suddenly had to pay $70 to move it to a layer 2 where they could actually use the funds. Keep in mind, even $100 can be a big deal for people living in non-developed countries. That's a great point. I mean, that happened to me when I owned Ethereum. I mean, I hadn't bought Ethereum for a while, and I had some Ethereum, and I had like a few other like tokens, I guess, in my MetaMask. I think I had some game token. I forgot. I think I still do, actually, if the hacker didn't get to that either. Because if you guys don't remember, I got hacked and like I got my Ethereum stolen, and yeah, it was cool. But he paid high transaction costs at least, so yeah, screw you. So so the thing is, I couldn't get my coins off MetaMask without putting more Ethereum into the MetaMask in order to pay the gas fees. I remember that distinctly. And what he's saying here really resonates with me for that reason. And if you are a hodler of Bitcoin, maybe you have a lot of gains happening, but you're going to have to pay perhaps big transaction costs if you want to onboard yourself to a layer 2 or just cash out. That's something to note. People can get caught in that thing. So moving on, he says, now scale that to a global adoption scenario. You're looking at L1 fees in the millions. L2s and L3s are probably doing fine, but you got something left in L1. Good luck getting it out. And by the way, the L2s and the L3s is probably going to be totally centralized, totally surveilled, and yeah, you're going to be screwed at that point. At least with hard forks, old users can update their clients and move on. In this scenario, I'm not sure what you could possibly do other than wait for a miraculous brief discount on L1 fees like ETH people were doing last year. I mean, is that not very insightful? That's very insightful. Oh, and this is a cool graphic of what it's like to get privacy with Bitcoin. So, interesting. Moving on. I feel like I'm speeding through this as fast as I can, but we're at an hour. So, let me fix my hair. All right. So, we've got more to go. We're catching up. I mean, I've been gone for a while, so why not? And this seems like a long time to me to be talking because my introverted nature, but this is no problem for people like Jay Dyer, apparently, who talk for like 4 hours straight. I don't know how they do it, but the USDA is trying to bait people into registering their garden with the People's Garden Initiative. Now, has anything sounded more communist than that? Whenever you hear the People's anything, that's when you run for your life. The People's Liberation Army. The People's, something, something, something out of Cambodia or whatever, right? Everything's called the People's. And that's your cue. That's like some kind of like socialist thing, right? Local gardens across the country, and this is a quote from the USDA report, local gardens across the country share the USDA's goals of building more diversified and resilient local food systems, empowering communities to come together around expanding access to healthy food. And by the way, addressing climate change and advancing equity. Now, what does that mean? What does equity and climate change have to do with freaking food and gardens? I don't understand. I mean, do you have to grow an equal amount of like black olives to red peppers or something? I don't understand. And then climate change. So basically, you get onboarded to the USDA's food surveillance grid, basically. And then if you're not following the regulations, that they could just change in an instant, like they did in Holland. Well, maybe they come shut down your farm or your garden, right? So you thought you were going to empower your community by signing up for the USDA. Oh, psych! They're just going to come shut you down because you're not using, fertilizer that has zero nitrogen or whatever, right? So something to consider, guys. Just keep everything private. Your garden, your home, your face. Don't do half the things that I do. The church you go to. Okay, so just stay private as much as you can. It's probably a good idea, especially in this environment that we're moving into, especially your food, guys. I don't have to tell you guys. You're smart. But I said a better idea. Start a big, beautiful garden. Don't register anything. Buy and sell in Monero, silver, etc. Eat fresh and live free. Makes sense, doesn't it? So this is Adam back. I think I had this open because he was also going on this climate change thing, talking about Bitcoin being like green or whatever. So he's fallen into it. Trace Evader, haven't heard from you in a while. I just pulled up your Twitter just to see if you had any unique takes. But we miss you, Trace Evader. All right, just needed a breather. Cool. So this is a story from the Daily Dot. A tech startup with a wildly successful GoFundMe is now at the mercy of PayPal, which is holding over 1.3 million in sales hostage. Okay, so just another story of PayPal conscripting user funds. And this is like a tech startup. Now, I don't know why they did this. This is pretty interesting. But do we need to speculate what the reason would be? I don't think so. Because in the crypto world, you don't need permission. That's the whole point. You don't need to rely on PayPal, which has done this to countless numbers of people. And it's also done it to people who say things they don't like on social media, particularly conservative Christians. Moving on, Zero Hedge, now coming out in favor of Monero. Now, this is the second tweet that he's made about Monero. And this is a Zero Hedge contributor. I'm wondering, bro, when you're going to write an article and post it on Zero Hedge. Would love to see it. Would love to see it. I've only seen one story on Zero Hedge over the last 5 years or however long I've been reading Zero Hedge that talked in passing about Monero. I mean, for the most part, there's like a Bitcoin article every day. And they're even behind Ethereum, which is astonishing. But I think the one story that I read about that had Monero named was when like a hedge fund guy talked about how he was getting into Monero instead of Bitcoin because Monero is like what everyone thought Bitcoin was. And I think this was written by, quote, the Raven, who Zero Hedge and he have a lot of correspondence about. Anyways, you guys got to write more about Monero. Come on. And then he says, PayPal has confiscated funds from one of our portfolio companies and refuses to explain why, how to rectify or return the funds. We will exclusively be accepting crypto for payments going forward. And then he says, Monero payments clear in under 20 minutes and cannot be stolen. I mean, it's just, I love you, bro. I mean, fantastic that you're moving to Monero and you're giving it a shout out. But of all the things that you could talk about in regards to Monero, it's just interesting you pick that it clears under 20 minutes and it can't be stolen. It can't be tracked. That's also important, right? I don't know why I'm criticizing this guy. I'm being a you know what. Let me just move on. So you can be reasonably assured that you've received a Monero payment in a matter of 2 minutes. I mean, as soon as that first confirmation goes through, you're probably fine. And in most cases, you can use zero conf. It's not a big deal. But for it to totally clear, yeah, it takes about 20 minutes. This is just a good take by Ian Niculescu. I always like to give good Monero bro shout out. Takes privacy is a way to protect yourself against some evils of this world, but to God, you have no privacy. I always try to act morally and repent for my sins. I think that's a good take. Just a good take in passing. Just wanted to give it a shout out. An update on Monero adoption. Going nuclear. More people are using it. As per Seth for Privacy, he says, you can clearly see demand has continued to skyrocket despite delistings and vague regulatory oppression. They can't stop people from waking up and choosing to use a powerful decentralized tool for financial privacy and thus freedom. Yep. So more adoption happening. Who cares about the price? What's going on under the hood is quite impressive. This is just an interesting thing I saw on the Monero Reddit from Blazing Hot Fire Fox. Cool name, dude. Research paper that used AI to try to trace Monero ring signatures using on-chain data. The results show that with 11 ring members, public information on the Monero chain could aid an attacker in predicting the true spend of a transaction greater than the random guessing probability of 9%, 1 out of 11. With this model, the likelihood of a correct guess drew to 13.3%. Wow, guys. Very impressive, 13%, a modest increase. But that's the likelihood of a correct guess. That doesn't say anything qualitatively about how much certainty they have that guess is correct. So you still have that deniable plausibility. But, if you're in communist China, right, it's worth considering, do I even have plausible deniability? If I'm even suspected, is that enough? So that's why Monero increased the ring size to 16, which means the accuracy is even lower. But as some people have noted, it's sort of like what do they call it? Like a cat and mouse chase, where it's like Monero increases its privacy, and then the tools to crack that privacy get ever more sophisticated, and then Monero has to increase the privacy again. Now, if Seraphis succeeds, then we could see ring sizes of 128. Now, that would pretty much make Monero private to a degree that it will be very, if not just virtually impossible to trace to any significant degree. Now, it's very difficult right now, if not impossible, practically, to track and trace Monero, unless you're like, going on and off exchanges and that kind of thing. But, or you're just transacting on an exchange. But let's see. Okay, let's just move on. I'm getting tired. Whoboy Global to the list Dash, DCR, Decreed, Firo, Monero, Verge, Zcash, and Zen. I don't even know what Zen is. But they're going after the privacy coins, so-called privacy coins. It's so funny that Dash is still considered a privacy coin. Like, the people from Dash even came out and said that it's not as private as people believe. Like, it's as private as Bitcoin, which isn't private at all. Like, you have, purportedly, a privacy option, but the problem is it's optional, just like Zcash. And if it's optional, that means people can see you using the privacy feature. Because if it's a public chain, well, when you use it privately, they're going to know that you're using privately, which makes it not so private to begin with. So, I mean, unless everybody in Zcash starts to use shielded transactions, or everybody in Dash starts to use totally private transactions, it's not going to work. You don't have that fungibility. You don't have everybody using private, doing private transactions. So, not even a privacy coin, I would say. Fire is doing some interesting things. I have somebody who is kind of like a buddy of mine on Twitter. His name is Crypto Monk. He's big on Firo. I've not looked too much into it, but there are some impressive people working on it. I'm curious. What do you guys think about Firo? Sounds pretty interesting. But Whoboy Global, they say, strictly complies with the compliance policies of every country and region and always endeavors to safeguard our users' assets in compliance with the latest financial regulations and in accordance with this article, Whoboy Global token management rules. Whoboy Global has terminated the trading service for the following privacy tokens. So we already saw this in the UK with Kraken, and we're just going to see more of this. We're not sweating. It doesn't bother us. But we did see some interesting cognitive dissonance from Brian here. So I want you guys to listen to this, because Notoriously, Coinbase doesn't have Monero on the exchange. Notoriously. And they won't have Monero, which is like the most legit cryptocurrency out there. But they'll have like doggy coins and they'll allow people to gamble on the dumbest cryptos ever. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they allowed like Squid Game or Vlad coin to be traded on there. But this is what he says
in society. So, it's kind of similar to the early days of the internet when everything was HTTP and the people were starting to do online shopping and they were putting their credit cards in and it was just going over the wire in plain text. And the world moves to HTTPS, with the lock icon. And it's like, that should be the default, I think, in crypto as well. There are instances where you'd want to have every transaction be public. Like, for instance, if you're a charity, you want full auditability of anybody in the world, like, where the money is coming from and where it's going. Like, that would be a cool paper trail to just do as a nonprofit or something. But if you're a private company, if you're a private citizen, like, I think most people in the world would probably want to have by default private. So,
okay. I don't disagree with a single thing that he said. In fact, he just made a fantastic case for Monero. But why doesn't he list Monero? Well, he says, from what I understand, that they're worried about the risk of having these cryptos be traded and having them be put in the crosshairs of the regulators because maybe some people are using those cryptos to facilitate money laundering or whatever. And so they're taking the conservative, safe approach. Okay, well, as you just said, Brian, if people want to have true cryptocurrency, why aren't you going to give it to them as a crypto exchange? Aren't you saying that you're not going to give access to the best cryptocurrency that there is? Because essentially that's what you just said. You just said the end-all, be-all of crypto is Monero, or our privacy coins. But you're not going to give people access to those coins. Okay, so why do we need you? Why do we need your exchange? We don't. That's the answer. We have Haveno. We've got our lovely Trade Ogre. Shout out to Trade Ogre. Still alive and well. Still haven't done any kind of exit scams. I mean, Trade Ogre, who runs Trade Ogre? I should add them to my prayer list. I mean, they're really wonderful. But yeah, I mean, why do we need you? I bet you anything Brian Armstrong is on Trade Ogre. I bet he is a big fan. I think he's a big fan of Trade Ogre. Anyway, yeah, so we don't need Coinbase. They can go to the abyss. That's fine. But I'm glad that he said that. I'm glad that we got a moment of honesty from Brian. And, I think that Brian honestly probably means well. And he's trying to do the best he can with the environment that he's in, blah, blah, blah. But I just wanted to point out that hypocrisy. I mean, at least make the effort to list it. I mean, Perkins Coie came out and said that no exchange, nobody would be violating anything. People would be in compliance if they allowed Monero to be traded or used. There's nothing illegal about Monero or privacy coins, especially because they have view and spend keys, which allow them to opt into regulation. Okay, so why don't you list them? So this is from Justin German Guy. He says, I spoke with Huboy in advance of their delistings and other privacy coins. Delistings of privacy coins, trying to learn what was specifically the cause more than generic financial regulations. This is what he learned. First, a few facts. Trading was already disabled in South Korea and Australia. That's true. Huboy is a Seychelles company. Huboy has a large number of employees in South Korea. I was told that South Korea regulators demanded that Huboy list these assets worldwide. The demand was described to me as credible with consequences for noncompliance, such as shutting down South Korean offices, arresting Huboy employees. So exchange employees were threatened with arrest if they allowed privacy coins to be traded. Now, that's pretty extreme. That kind of reminds us of what happened with the Tornado Cash Bro, right? He was just working on, an Ethereum coin mixer, developing it, and he gets arrested for breaking the law retroactively, apparently, because it wasn't even like against the law yet for him to be working on Tornado Cash or being associated with it. It's like he had worked on it, then they made it illegal, and then they went after him. So there's no logic here. They're just trying to go after the enemy of their system or the enemies of their system, right? And it's not like these people are even bad people. It's just like they're in the way of their agenda. If true, this seems like a huge overreach. It's sad to think about a company being bullied by South Korea to stop offering services in Europe. Normally, this wouldn't really apply. Oh, well, unfortunately, we don't live in normal times. Spinning off a satellite office and or another entity, etc., for worldwide users, he recommended this and little to no South Korea connections. And then he said licensing or open sourcing existing Monero-related code, e.g. multisig, that they could no longer use. So he made some recommendations. That's great. But, yeah, that's interesting. And we could see the same thing with FATF or just the U.S. government in general. If they want to pressure somebody, they can do it. I mean, that's something that's interesting that I didn't even think about until now. That developer was in Holland when he was arrested. He was arrested by the Dutch authorities for breaking U.S. law. It wasn't an international law. It was a law that was put into effect by OFAC. So, again, it's just one big system, and all the Western governments are going to work together for the most part. And the thing to consider is that Western governments are becoming less prominent in the economic sphere, the geopolitical sphere. There's a big shift happening right now. It's been happening for a number of years, but now it's really starting to go into overdrive with this war in Ukraine. And the sanctions and the changing of the monetary order and the pivoting of Saudi Arabia and India to the east. It could be, I think that we shouldn't hope that things are going to get better in this regard, because China, Russia, India, Saudi Arabia, all these countries which are pivoting east, they're more tough on crypto than Western governments. So the future of crypto doesn't look entirely clear. I'm not going to say it doesn't look bright. I'm just going to say it doesn't look clear. I mean, we're seeing the crypto coup d'etat. We're seeing crypto start to be deployed, I think, against the public. And I think we're going to see more of that. CBDCs are coming and all that, which isn't great. But it's not clear what's going to be happening. And most cases, I think, most outcomes just aren't good for crypto as a whole and probably aren't good for the citizens of the world, I think. Just think out the top with you guys. Reason Monero adoption has to happen. Anyways, let's move on. I think we're kind of getting to the end of this video. I wanted to talk about the European energy crisis here. This kind of plays into a post by the crypto vigilante who says, Monero is the best cryptocurrency there is. What's up? Useless. Only in a scenario where there is no internet connection / electricity due to its digital nature. But then in that case, I guess there are other things to worry about. You guys remember like a year ago when we came out with that video called Hedging Against Crypto, and we talked about the possibility of like electricity infrastructure crises, and we talked about examples where internet goes out in nations because of political unrest, and that sounded kind of crazy at the time. But I think that's important. And I think one thing that gives legitimacy to the Monero community is the fact that a lot of people in the community encourage people to get a stack of silver or gold before they get involved with Monero. Monero is sort of like, you have to have certain sets of assumptions if you want Monero to succeed in the world. You have to assume certain things. You have to assume like civilization is going to continue to exist. And if it doesn't, then your Monero for the most part is going to do jack all. And with what we're seeing, it's not a given. It's really not. It's really not a given that the electricity infrastructure and, rule of law and all that stuff is going to stay intact. Now, you have people with solar panels, that's nice, but you need a little bit more than that in order to create like a network of people who have easy access to crypto, know what crypto is, and see its value. Otherwise, you're going to need like bottles of whiskey, cigarettes, and gold and silver. And that's scary for people to think about. But I think with everything that we're seeing, that's not necessarily totally out of the question. So hedge against that. I think that's reasonable. And if you're in Europe, this is a conversation which is actually probably happening right now. And I just want to thank my European listeners for taking the $100 it probably cost you to get to this point in the video. Electricity cost. Cheers to you, brother. Stay warm. But Europe's energy crisis, this is from the Gatestone Institute. And this Who Boy article is from, well, Who Boy, anyways. This is from Pete Hoekstra. In response to Russia severely restricting or cutting off gas supplies, EU governments will take the dramatic actions over the coming months to help the populace. We'll see what happens with that. We'll get to some interesting things, but it says Germany recently announced it would keep 2 of the nuclear plants it was shutting as backups just in case, keep them open. EU leaders will then go back to the voters and describe the amazing job they did while failing to mention they were the ones who made the decisions that put their countries in this crisis in the first place. Right, and this crisis had been coming for a while. I mean, it's not just Russia. I mean, we had made videos about the coming infrastructure electricity crisis before this whole war took off. I mean, this is something which has been coming about because of crazy energy policies, this whole green agenda, the shunning of nuclear power, and the antagonism towards oil, gas, and fossil fuels. I mean, anyone could have seen this coming. And now they're trying to blame all this on the Ruskies. But it's ridiculous. I think you guys recognize that. But, yeah, this has been part of a larger thing. And there's a story today. Oh, here we go. We just read about how they're keeping nuclear power plants open. Well, this just came out today. German nuclear power plant is shut down after reported leak. So it's just stuff like this where if you read enough about this, you see the trend and it's like, okay, either the people in charge are just totally retarded and they can't competently fix basic issues to the point where we can reasonably anticipate civilization continuing, or they're totally evil and they're trying to literally take down their own countries and civilizations to, you know, move forward a particular agenda, which must be nefarious. I mean, it's either one of the two. So with both of those being considered, you have to reasonably suspect that there is a chance your cryptocurrency is going to jack off for you. And it could decrease in value because maybe people start to sell a lot of their crypto because they don't see the value in having digital money in a world where they have to buy freaking firewood in order to stay warm and stay alive. So that's something to consider. That's something to consider. That's something which goes against the super op and mega bullish case. That's one thing. But I'm presenting this to you guys because I'm trying to just be honest about the information that I'm seeing here. I can be wrong about things. I mean, we were right about Russia going to make a lot of money with their oil and gas. I mean, they're making more money than ever. They're minting money, literally. Demand for Russian oil is through the roof from countries like India and China, etc., Saudi Arabia. So we were right with our call that Russia gas firms would be doing extraordinarily well. We were big into Gazprom, or at least I was. What I didn't see coming was a war that would then cause the entire world to put sanctions on these firms and essentially make it impossible to hold these securities. And so we were wrong, or at least I was. I was wrong. I was wrong in the Gazprom play. It is essentially worthless now, unless you hire like Russian lawyers to then settle your position in a Russian court. But I don't think you guys have enough money in Gazprom. I certainly don't to make that justifiable. I mean, it's crazy the kind of stuff I was reading on Yahoo. On Yahoo, they were talking about what I was just telling you, like having to hire Russian lawyers because you can't settle outside of Russia these positions. You can't get euros, you can't get dollars because these companies are sanctioned. So, yeah, we took an L on that one. I mean, we were right. The thesis was correct. But, yeah, it's just a bad position. We could have maybe profited another way. But, yeah, more on this whole green thing. More on the crisis. California governor signs most aggressive package of green laws. This was 2 days ago. So, yeah, the green agenda is moving forward, even though California is having, like, rolling blackouts regularly. They're moving the agenda forward. So the package includes 40 bills that appear to provide new green rules on laws related to things ranging from large-scale industry to the family home and private and public transportation. They want to accelerate the state's transition to non-conventional energy sources. They're targeting big polluters. So you see where this is all going, right? It's just totally unreasonable. And that's what we're going to see. But it's really unfortunate to see this because I have a buddy who works in manufacturing. And what he's telling me is if the crisis in Europe really continues and snowballs and they don't fix this, they don't come up with some solution to fill that gap in energy, which is caused by Russia cutting off exports, well, a lot of that manufacturing is going to shut down and move somewhere else. And once it shuts down and moves somewhere else, it ain't coming back, especially because they've seen all this stuff coming just as we have. The craziness of the green policies, the craziness of the people in charge. It makes long-term business forecasting very capricious and very hard to do. So once they move, they're gone. They ain't coming back. And they're getting to that point. My buddy says if this carries on for another few months, a lot of these companies are going to come to the States. But the problem is if we have this kind of crap going on in the States, they're just going to go somewhere else. They're probably going to go to Asia. I mean, why not just go to China? Why not just go to Vietnam or Laos or Cambodia where energy is cheap? They don't have this green crap going on. These people just want to make money and get out of the third world. And so a lot of that production could go over there. The problem is you don't really have the brains to operate a lot of that stuff, unfortunately. And so maybe you're going to have to train a lot of new people unless a lot of those people in Europe move to these other countries. I'm not sure how that's going to work. But anyways, these are things that are disappointing to see because we really have an opportunity here to resource a lot of manufacturing back to the States. Maybe they go to Mexico too. I don't know. Because Mexico doesn't really seem to be going along with all this crap either. But that's what's going on. And this is very interesting. This is going to cause more problems. But Liz Truss government is set to fix the price of business energy this winter to roughly the price of households, meaning a 50% cut for many firms who've signed contracts recently. Now, what I've seen is certain firms qualify and certain firms don't qualify. So we're back to the whole essential, non-essential thing. And at that point, it's going to be up to the government who succeeds and who doesn't. Who gets cheap energy so that they could profit or at least survive, and who doesn't. Okay, so now the government's back in control. Now the government can determine who's essential, non-essential, who can go on, who can't go on. I mean, again, this is all part of the same agenda. It's not coincidence that we're seeing this same paradigm continuing into 2022, except under a different guise, right? This is communism. Matthew Pines, he says, every house in the UK will soon be running a Bitcoin ASIC because the UK government freezes gas and electricity bills for the average household at 2,500 euros a year for the next 2 years. So, yeah, what do you think is going to happen? All these households are going to use as much freaking electricity as possible, okay? Because if your average household is paying that, okay, well, again, it's just so predictable. You're going to have people who want to take advantage of this. You're going to have a tragedy of the commons type thing play in. And it's not like they're fixing the supply problem, even though I did hear the UK was considering opening up fracking wells. But that's going to take a lot of investment. That's going to take a lot of time. And you're going to get some people who are very skeptical about doing that because it's like, okay, well, you just want to use us to get through this crisis, and then you're going to shut us down again, which means we're going to take a big L on all this investment, which is supposed to be paid back and reap the profits from for the next 10 years, right? But you don't have 10 years. You have maybe like 5 years because they are still on this green agenda, apparently. So how that's going to work, I don't know. But, yeah, I could see a lot of people in the UK mining Bitcoin. But then it's going to get to, well, we have a lot of people mining Bitcoin now. We need to shut down Bitcoin mining, which is another thing that we've talked about for about a year. So I think as electricity gets more expensive, you're going to have more centralization of Bitcoin mining because the marginal miner is not going to be able to afford it. Only those who scale production are going to be able to afford it. It's going to cause more centralization and probably more centralization in the United States, where we're already seeing a lot of centralization. We're at like 40% now as far as the hash rate is concerned. A lot of European miners going to go to the United States. But we have electricity prices going up here too. So maybe they move somewhere else. I don't know. you probably have a lot of Bitcoin miners opening up in Russia because gas is cheap over there. They're not opening up in China, I don't think. But then again, I think we have seen some miners still operating out of China because China is just a huge freaking country and they can't reasonably regulate everything, right? But anyways, moving on. The European energy crisis enters phase 2, thus begins. Millions of Europeans need support to pay their energy bills. Some companies produce electricity at low cost and make great margins. We propose a cap on their revenues that will raise more than $140 billion, and we will deeply reform our electricity market. And more price controls coming. And price controls on electricity. Because consider this. This doesn't fix the sourcing of the supply problem, which is the source of the problem, right? More people are just going to use more of this stuff, which means you're going to have to ration gas and electricity. There's going to be rationing, 100%. If there's rationing of gas and electricity is what goes into the transportation, the manufacture of everything else, which means you're going to have rationing of those too. If you have rationing of those things, you're going to have people who want to have more than the ration amount, which means there are going to be black markets which open up, and have that in conjunction with the growing cashless society, the growing trend towards CBDC. Again, you see the use of a private digital cryptocurrency like Monero, blah, blah, blah. Super hyper mega bullish case. Anything else I want to talk about? Ukraine needs help to prepare this winter. So, right, they're not making any concessions to Russia. There's no, okay, we were wrong. We screwed up, and our people are going to freeze by the millions this winter. Sorry, Russia, let's make a deal. Let's have peace. No, they're going to send more weapons. They're going to get more involved in this war, okay, which just solidifies the trend. Russia's going to cut them off completely. And how are they going to fill that gap? I don't know. I mean, I've heard that they're going to go to Azerbaijan to try to get gas from them, but they've now been shelling and raiding the Armenian border recently. So, just interesting stuff going on. Okay, I think that's it. Man. Yeah, I could read that. I don't care. Yeah, it's been a good time with you guys going over the news. Thank you guys for the donations. I have seen donations come in for the last few videos, so thank you guys for that. It's always good to kind of pay it forward and to support people who you think are getting good information out there, especially in this environment where there's just a lot of bad intel. So thank you guys for showing me that you guys are getting value from this information. I think it is valuable, and it's good to know. I think we're continuing to be ahead of the curve on a lot of this stuff, and things are just kind of playing out in a way where it's starting to get messy. I want to say that things are going according to how we anticipate, but things are getting messy, and the fog of war is coming, and as we move forward, things are going to be ever more uncertain. But I think my position in crypto is still unshakable, in particular Monero and the privacy coins. I think the privacy coins will, in general, have a day where people just want to ape into this stuff because it becomes a trend. I think Monero will lead that charge, and I think that you're going to have like the typical suspects who are into Dodge and Sheep Token, like, oh, cool, like there's like a pirate privacy coin too. Let's dig into that, or like, oh, cool, private smart contracts with this coin or that coin. Let's check it out. A coin that I really do actually think has good things going for it, if you guys are curious, is Zano. I check out Zano. I mean, if there's another crypto that I think has it going on, I think it's Zano. I mean, they're trying to do escrow stuff on the base layer and have it be private, which is really cool because I think that could play a lot into darknet marketplaces, because one of the complications from what I understand is that you don't really have multi-sig capability, which allows for an escrow type thing to take place on dark web marketplaces with Monero. And I think Zano could possibly provide that in a way which is more efficient and effective. So they're still working on it. There's still a lot that's in limbo with Zano, from what I understand. They're doing research on hybrid proof of work to proof of stake, and they're still trying to figure out how to implement that into the code. That's still being worked on, from what I understand. but they do have a type of tail emission. They do have privacy on the base layer, and the person who is developing on Zano, he was one of the main developers behind Monero, actually, which is Zoidberg. So I think it's something interesting to check out. I'm not asking you guys to ape into this stuff. Do your research first, but I just wanted to give you guys that little tip. I think it's interesting. I've got a little bag myself. We'll see what happens with it, but I'd rather own something like Zano or Haven or even Concealed Network than Bitcoin, because it's got to be private. It's just non-negotiable. It has to be private for me to get into it. I'm just not interested in surveillance coins. I'm not interested, no matter how much hype there is, no matter how much it's being adopted by institutions. I'm not going to buy a cryptocurrency which has my information being publicly transmitted to a worldwide ledger. There's nothing interesting about that. I just don't like it. I'm not getting involved. I have gold and silver, which I think is a good play against inflation. I don't need to have a digital inflation hedge where everyone knows how much money I'm making on the nominal. Like, that's not interesting to me, and I'm sure it's not interesting to you guys either. So I think privacy coins are going to have a day, and I think Monero is going to continue to inch its way up into the crypto consciousness out there. So I think that's it. Monero Matteo, thank you guys for tuning in. Again, if you guys want to come check out the festival at my church, it's October 15th. I don't know if I said the day. Apologize about that. But October 15th and 16th. So Saturday and Sunday. I'm serving on Sunday. And so come check it out. It's going to be a good opportunity for you to learn about Orthodoxy and to check out the beautiful church and meet some cool people. So that's about it. Hope you guys are having a wonderful end of your summer. It's very sad. I'm a summer kind of guy. I love summer. But here we go in the fall, where it's beautiful down here in Appalachia. And it's going to be a good end of the year. It's going to be a great end of the year, I think. So God bless you all. Hope you guys continue to do well. And we'll talk next time. Bye-bye.